HOA Karen poured coffee on my disabled daughter. She started crying immediately, her small body shaking with pain as the hot liquid burned through her clothes. Karen's cold eyes showed no remorse. "Wheelchairs don't belong here anyway," she muttered. She had no idea I was an FBI agent. Before watching full video, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more Karen stories. HOA Karen spilled boiling coffee on my disabled daughter, unaware I am FBI agent. HOA Karen poured coffee on my disabled daughter. She started crying immediately, her small body shaking with pain as the hot liquid burned through her clothes. Karen's cold eyes showed no remorse. "Wheelchairs don't belong here anyway," she muttered. She had no idea I was an FBI agent. I still remember every detail of that horrible day. The smell of burning coffee. The sound of my daughter's scream. The silence that fell over the room when I finally revealed who I really was. My name is David Cooper. For 15 years, I've worked as a special agent with the FBI, specializing in civil rights violations. But at home, I'm just dad to my beautiful 7-year-old daughter, Sarah. Sarah was born with spina bifida. She's been in a wheelchair since she was 3, but that never dimmed her bright spirit. Her laughter could light up the darkest room. Her courage in facing daily challenges humbled me. After my wife died from cancer 2 years ago, Sarah became my entire world. We moved to Oakwood Heights 3 months ago. I wanted a fresh start for us both, a single-level house with wide hallways for Sarah's wheelchair, good schools, and friendly neighbors. The house on Birch Street seemed perfect, and most of our neighbors welcomed us warmly. Except for one, Margaret Holloway, the president of the Homeowners Association. From day one, Margaret made it clear we weren't welcome. It started when the moving truck pulled into our driveway. Margaret marched over, clipboard in hand, lips pinched in a tight frown. "You need HOA approval before installing any ramps or modifications," she said, not bothering to introduce herself. She glanced at Sarah's wheelchair with obvious distaste. "I'm David Cooper," I said calmly, extending my hand. "And this is my daughter, Sarah." Sarah smiled up at Margaret. "Hello. I like your necklace. It's sparkly." Margaret ignored Sarah completely. The HOA has standards to maintain property values. Unsightly modifications are not permitted. The Americans with Disabilities Act allows for reasonable accommodations, I explained, including wheelchair ramps. "Rules are rules, Mr. Cooper. I suggest you read your contract thoroughly." As she walked away, Sarah's smile faded. "Daddy, why doesn't that lady like me?" "Some people are just grumpy," I said, kneeling beside her wheelchair. "It's not about you, sweetheart." But it was about Sarah. Over the next 3 months, Margaret sent us violation notices for everything: our mailbox height, the color of our curtains, the flowers we planted. Each time I responded respectfully but firmly, citing relevant accessibility laws. I never mentioned my FBI credentials. I wanted to be known as Sarah's dad, not a federal agent. The tension built until the quarterly HOA meeting. I didn't want to go, but our neighbor Mrs. Garcia insisted. "You must come," she urged. "Margaret is trying to pass new rules about exterior aesthetics that could affect your ramp. We need your vote." So on a warm Thursday evening, Sarah and I headed to the community center. She wore her favorite yellow dress and butterfly hair clips. I promised her ice cream afterward if she sat quietly through the boring meeting. The room was already half full when we arrived. Margaret stood at the front, arranging papers at the podium, a large coffee mug steaming beside her. She looked up as we entered, her eyes narrowing at the sight of Sarah's wheelchair. Mrs. Garcia waved us over to sit next to her in the second row. As I helped position Sarah's wheelchair in the aisle, I noticed Margaret whispering to another board member, both of them glancing our way. The meeting began precisely at 7 p.m. Margaret ran through standard updates, landscaping contracts, community pool maintenance, parking violations. I could feel Sarah getting restless beside me, fidgeting with the wheels on her chair. Final item on the agenda, Margaret announced, proposed amendment to Section 12 regarding exterior modifications. She outlined new restrictions that would effectively ban any non-standard structures visible from the street, including wheelchair ramps. When she finished speaking, I raised my hand. This amendment appears to violate the Fair Housing Act and ADA requirements for reasonable accommodations. Margaret's face flushed. "This is about maintaining neighborhood standards, Mr. Cooper. Your special circumstances don't entitle you to special treatment." "Access is not special treatment," I replied evenly. "It's a legal right." Several neighbors nodded in agreement. Margaret's knuckles whitened around her pen. Perhaps if you had properly consulted the board before moving in, she said, her voice rising, we could have directed you to more suitable neighborhoods for your situation. The room fell uncomfortably quiet. Even those who typically supported Margaret looked shocked at her words. Are you suggesting that families with disabled members shouldn't live here? I asked, keeping my voice calm despite my growing anger. I'm suggesting that you knew the rules when you purchased your home, Margaret snapped. She stepped out from behind the podium and walked toward our row, coffee mug in hand. Your constant demands for exceptions disrupt our entire community. My daughter needs access to our home, I said. That's hardly a disruption. Sarah tugged at my sleeve. Daddy, can we go? I don't like it here. In a minute, sweetheart, I whispered. Margaret now stood directly in front of us, looming over Sarah's wheelchair. This is exactly the problem. These meetings aren't appropriate for children, especially ones with special needs. My daughter has every right to be here, I said, standing up to face Margaret. As a resident affected by your proposed rules. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Margaret gestured wildly with the hand holding her coffee mug. Whether intentional or not, the hot liquid arced through the air and splashed directly onto Sarah's lap and arms. Sarah's scream tore through the room. The burning coffee soaked through her yellow dress, instantly turning her skin an angry red. She thrashed in her wheelchair, unable to escape the scalding pain. Sarah! I shouted, immediately dropping to my knees beside her. I frantically tried to blot the hot liquid with my jacket, but the damage was already done. Sarah's wails pierced my heart as tears streamed down her face. Mrs. Garcia was already rushing forward with napkins. Someone get ice. Quickly. As neighbors scrambled to help, Margaret stood frozen, empty mug still in her hand. But it was her next words that turned my panic to cold fury. She shouldn't have been in the aisle, Margaret said defensively. This wouldn't have happened if her wheelchair wasn't blocking the walkway. The room fell silent except for Sarah's sobs. Everyone had heard. Everyone had seen. With deliberate calm, I lifted Sarah from her wheelchair, cradling her against my chest. Mrs. Garcia, I said quietly, would you please call 911? My daughter needs medical attention for these burns. Of course, David, she replied, already dialing on her phone. I turned to face Margaret. And you should call your lawyer. Margaret's face paled. It was an accident. You can't possibly think. Special Agent David Cooper, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Civil Rights Division, I said, my voice carrying in the silent room. I hadn't wanted to reveal my profession, but Sarah's pain had stripped away that luxury. What just happened was assault on a disabled minor. Whether you meant to spill that coffee or not, your words make your intent very clear. Whispers erupted around the room. Margaret took a step back. You can't intimidate me with a job title, she stammered, but her voice shook. This isn't intimidation, Mrs. Holloway. This is a father protecting his daughter. I looked down at Sarah, whimpering against my chest. And I will use every legal means available to ensure there are consequences for hurting her. The emergency room doctor confirmed second-degree burns on Sarah's thighs, stomach, and right arm. As the nurse applied burn ointment and bandages, Sarah clutched my hand, her small face tight with pain. It hurts, Daddy, she whispered. I know, sweetheart, I said, fighting back tears. The medicine will help soon. Officer Rivera waited patiently while Sarah received treatment. When she had finally fallen asleep, aided by pain medication, he took my statement. We've already spoken to 6 witnesses, he informed me. They all say the same thing, that Mrs. Holloway approached aggressively and made discriminatory comments before and after the incident. I want to press charges, I said. This wasn't just an accident. She's been targeting us since we moved in because of Sarah's disability. Officer Rivera nodded. Given the circumstances and the victim being a disabled minor, the DA will take this very seriously. We'll need documentation of the previous harassment. Fortunately, I had kept every violation notice, every email, every record of our interactions. Margaret Holloway had created a paper trail of her discrimination. The next few weeks were difficult. Sarah's burns slowly healed, but she had nightmares about the mean coffee lady. She refused to go near the community center and became anxious around strangers. I took leave from work to stay with her, reading her favorite books and assuring her she was safe. Our neighbors rallied around us. Mrs. Garcia brought dinner every evening. Other families dropped off cards and small gifts for Sarah. Even the other HOA board members came to apologize, insisting that Margaret's views didn't reflect the community. Margaret was arrested and charged with assault, reckless endangerment, and violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. She hired an expensive lawyer who claimed it was all a terrible accident, but the evidence and witness statements were overwhelming. 3 weeks after the incident, we received notice of the preliminary hearing. I worried about how Sarah would handle seeing Margaret again, but my brave girl surprised me. "I want to go, Daddy," she said. "Mrs. Garcia says we have to stand up to bullies." On the morning of the hearing, Sarah chose her outfit carefully, a brave blue dress with silver stars. "Like a superhero," she explained. The courthouse was intimidating, but Sarah wheeled herself through the doors with determination. Mrs. Garcia and several neighbors met us inside, forming a protective circle around Sarah. Margaret arrived with her husband and lawyer, looking subdued in a simple navy suit. She kept her eyes down, avoiding looking at Sarah. Judge Ramsey called the court to order. The prosecutor presented the case, including photographs of Sarah's burns, medical reports, and multiple witness statements. Margaret's lawyer argued it was an unfortunate accident blown out of proportion. When it was Sarah's turn to speak, the courtroom fell silent. At 7 years old, she was the youngest person there, but her voice was clear and steady. "The coffee was really hot," she said simply. "It burned me bad. And she said I shouldn't be there because of my wheelchair." Sarah looked directly at Margaret. "But my wheelchair is just how I move around. It's not scary or bad." There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even Margaret looked away, her shoulders slumped. Judge Ramsey reviewed all the evidence before making her decision. "The court finds sufficient evidence to proceed to trial on all charges," she announced. "Additionally, I am issuing a restraining order prohibiting Mrs. Holloway from coming within 100 yards of Sarah Cooper or her residence." Margaret's lawyer immediately protested. "Your Honor, Mrs. Holloway lives in the same neighborhood. This restraining order would force her to move." Judge Ramsey was unmoved. "Then Mrs. Holloway has a difficult decision to make. The safety of a child takes precedence over housing preferences. Bail is set at $30,000. As we left the courthouse, reporters approached us. I had avoided the media, wanting to protect Sarah's privacy, but she tugged at my sleeve. "Can I talk to them, Daddy? I want to help other kids like me." I nodded, amazed once again by her courage. "I want other kids in wheelchairs to know they belong everywhere," Sarah told the reporters. "My daddy says being different isn't wrong, and nobody should be mean because of something you can't help." Her words made the front page of the local paper. Letters of support flooded our mailbox. A disability rights organization reached out, offering to help establish better accessibility guidelines for homeowners associations. Margaret Holloway pled guilty 2 months later, accepting a plea deal that included 18 months of probation, 300 hours of community service with organizations serving disabled children, a $15,000 fine to be donated to the pediatric burn unit, and mandatory sensitivity training. She also issued a public apology. "I was wrong," she admitted, standing before the judge. "I was so focused on rules and property values that I forgot about basic human decency. I am deeply sorry for the pain I caused Sarah and for my discriminatory attitude." Sarah, sitting beside me in her wheelchair, listened carefully. When Margaret finished speaking, Sarah whispered to me. I nodded, and the judge granted permission for her to speak. "I forgive you, Mrs. Holloway," Sarah said simply. "My daddy says holding on to anger just makes your heart heavy. I don't want a heavy heart anymore." Her capacity for forgiveness left me in awe. At 7 years old, she demonstrated more wisdom and compassion than most adults I knew. 6 months have passed since that day in court. Margaret and her husband sold their house and moved away, unable to comply with the restraining order otherwise. The HOA elected Mrs. Garcia as the new president, and her first action was to establish clear guidelines supporting accessibility and accommodations. Sarah's physical scars have faded to pink marks that will eventually disappear. The emotional scars are healing too, though she still sometimes has nightmares. But she's thriving in 2nd grade now, with friends who see beyond her wheelchair to the bright, loving girl inside. As for me, I no longer hide my FBI credentials from our neighbors. Not because I want special treatment, but because I've learned that sometimes standing in your full truth is necessary to protect what matters most. Yesterday, our neighborhood held its summer picnic. Sarah wheeled confidently through the crowd, joining in modified games and accepting ice cream from smiling neighbors. No one stared at her wheelchair. No one treated her differently. "Are you having fun, sweetheart?" I asked as she finished her second helping of chocolate ice cream. Sarah nodded happily. I love our neighborhood, Daddy. It feels like home now. As I watched my daughter laughing with her friends, I realized that justice comes not just from courtrooms and legal victories, but from communities learning and growing together. From a 7-year-old girl brave enough to forgive. And from the everyday courage of facing the world with an open heart, even after it has hurt you. That night, as I tucked Sarah into bed, she asked a question that caught me off guard. Daddy, do you think Mrs. Holloway is happier now that she's not so angry all the time? I considered carefully before answering. I hope so, Sarah. I hope she learned to see people instead of just rules. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Being mean made her face all pinched and tight. Maybe now she can smile more. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that my daughter was the strongest person I had ever known. Not despite her disability, but because of the wisdom and compassion it had helped her develop. Good night, my brave girl, I whispered, kissing her forehead. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. And I love you more than all the raindrops in the ocean, she replied with our nightly ritual, already drifting towards sleep. As I watched her peaceful face, I made a silent promise to continue fighting for a world where no child would be judged by their differences, a world worthy of my daughter's forgiving heart and boundless courage. Because in the end, that was the true justice we had won. Not just consequences for one person's cruelty, but the beginning of change for an entire community. And it had started with a little girl in a wheelchair, teaching adults what it really means to be brave.